Welcome to the Be Student Podcast, and thank you for joining me. I'm here today with my guest, Addison Kersey, my Chief Marketing Officer, and also my Chief Gen Z Millennial Officer, who helps me navigate through the fact that we have 5 generations now showing up at work in our workplaces across the world. This is getting more and more complicated for people to manage. Add a chaser of AI to it, and it gets even more complex. So we're spending some more and more time on these episodes filtering across the generational divide, where we're talking about how I might approach something as a Gen Xer, and then to get Addy's take on how she might look at it from the Gen Z, maybe millennial lens. So welcome, Addy. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for having me back again, Betsy.
We talked a lot this week. We were at the Orlando Women's Conference. Shout out to Orange Appeal Media and to Christy and Kate for a great conference. Lots focused on AI. And a lot of what we heard was about authenticity. We all know it when there's an M dash or, God forbid, an emoji in front of something. We know ChatGPT's fingerprints. We know when they've been there. And we're this early into the game. We know when ChatGPT's written something or done something. So we all want to show up more authentically. We know that the generation of young people, whether they're Alpha, Z, or Millennial, are wanting to be more authentic, have been told to be more authentic. That gives me hives because sometimes I see some judgment calls already from young people that make me concerned. As you know, a lot of our viewers are young and they're early career. We want this podcast to be useful for them. We want to be able to connect early career people to late career thinking that can help be cheat codes for them to navigate across generational lines, maybe even cheat codes to help you deal with your Gen X boss. And so today I've brought my advisor, my resident expert on how does this cut across those generational lines. And we want to talk about authenticity and how people need to show up or maybe don't need to show up. So I have heard critics say, "Oh, Betsy, you have a plastic, fantastic self when you're on camera or when you're showing up for work." I've definitely taken some coaching on how to show up more authentically, but certainly as the avatar of a board of directors of 21 people, many of whom are in serious corporate roles, I'm not really interested in freewheeling it and seeing how it goes if my authentic punches landed or not, because the consequences are even bigger for me. So let's talk about how we go from you should show up as authentic to plastic fantastic, right? Because we know inauthenticity isn't working. It's not gonna punch through any of the noise that we have in our culture around any of this stuff. But we have to accept that we're still very much operating in a matrix system that was created when men led the workplace, and that there is still a distant whiff of command and control hierarchies in our workplaces, because I was raised from my 20s in a command and control structure. And so I try not to operate one, but there's still parts of that you can't take out of me. That was baked into my DNA back in 1991, and it's not going anywhere, right? And so I'm aware that the workplace is radically different. But I remember in my 20s, there were people you just didn't talk to at the office. You never approached them. They were too busy. They were too senior. And the likes of you, 21-year-old person, did not mingle with the likes of them. Now, I mingle with people in their 20s in our office as a strategic advantage because I want to make sure that what we're doing appeals to people who are younger. The other piece is that, surprise, surprise, this podcast is followed primarily by young people, and the largest cohort of people who listen to it are under 50. So I have to make sure that what I'm doing resonates with with younger generations, and that I escape the confines of that command and control hierarchy, or I can't retain and attract people. But yet we're now hearing the pendulum swinging all the way to the other side, which is show up as your authentic self, wear pajamas to work. It's okay to wear a crop top to work. Top tip, it's not. Okay. Top tip, it is not okay to wear pajamas or crop tops to work. And I do think it's important to say, yeah, it is. You can do whatever you want. You can show up in a crop top or pajamas if you want. But the question is, do you want to retire? Do you want to pay for your kids' education? Do you want to pay for your kids to have health insurance? Do you want to have kids? Do you want to own a home? These are all things that are going to require a higher level of income in order to achieve those dreams. And what you're doing when you're showing up in a crop top or pajamas at work is saying, I want no further responsibility. You're branding yourself as someone who doesn't want to be taken seriously in the workplace, whose comfort is their most important thing about them. And that concerns me because it might not be the most important thing to know about them, but they've already telegraphed to everyone in the office, I'm not a serious person. Now, when you hear me say this, are you like, okay, boomer? Or tell me what you're thinking as I talk like that, because that is the reality of the people who are in charge will look at that and say, that person is not taking this show seriously, and they're not going to move up in priority rank in terms of promotions, and they're not going to have access to greater and greater wealth opportunities or higher incomes. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, it is one where my initial reaction is eye roll of, oh my gosh, we're talking about pajamas again. But in the sense of we've seen it happen, and now that I'm somebody who is in a leadership role, I've seen it when an intern comes in pajamas and we go, uh-oh.
Not pajamas. They don't come to our office in pajamas. But it's a metaphor. We won't say what we've seen.
And in that, but I think there are a lot of expectations and mixed messages that are being sent to these young people of how am I actually supposed to show up?
Yep.
Because in the job description on LinkedIn, it does say we're a company that's open. We want to know the whole you. We want to see all of these things that you're bringing of all the different parts of your identity that are showing up here. And they get there, and that's not actually the expectation of them. There's an amazing TED Talk by an author, Jodi Ann Burry, and it's all about the myth of being told to be authentic at work. She has a book coming up this year on the same topic. I can't wait to read it. But she opens the talk talking about a metaphor about an invitation to a party. And the host tells you, come as you are, just wear whatever you naturally wear. And you get there and it's actually a costume party.
Yeah, it's Reese Witherspoon showing up in the bunny costume and Legally Blonde, right?
And you get there and you lose the costume contest because you didn't even know you were supposed to be entering it. And because in that job description, it told you, come as you are, be authentic, be everything that you want to be. And then you show up there and everyone else is wearing a costume and they're outperforming you because they're wearing the costume. Now, in an ideal world, maybe it wouldn't matter if you were wearing the costume. You're so good at your job that it doesn't matter what you wear. But
I don't think that world exists.
Exactly.
But
But we have to live in reality that you do need to wear the costume. Now, I think you can get really creative of making it a costume that you still feel really comfortable in, that it really is showing off who you are, but it's through a professional lens, it's through a professional filter that you can still show up every day and you are yourself, but you're also setting yourself up for success.
Well, I like your outfit because it's business and party, right? It's like party print, but business cut, right? And I love that is an authentic choice for you because it's got a little bit of creativity and fun to it, but it's also in a cut that's appropriate for workplace. In our last episode, we did spend a lot of time talking about clothes, and clothes aren't the only ways that people can show up at work that takes things down a notch. I know one of the things we never want to do is squeeze the enthusiasm out of anybody. But when I see an email that's got one or too many exclamation points in it, my eyes roll back into my head, right? So yes, you're being authentically enthusiastic about the work that we do, but also as a young person, it's important that you close the gravitas gap for whoever might be reading your email. And you do that by not being overly emotive with punctuation. Tell me your thoughts when I say that.
Well, I know whenever I started, the woman who was training me, she said, never use more than one exclamation point when you're emailing Betsy.
That's one of my rules.
And I said, thank you for telling me that, because I might be somebody, I'm in my text messages throwing exclamation points around. So that's probably more my authentic communication. But I know in communicating with you what you value, and that I'm adjusting myself to be more professional in those emails to say, this is the standard of our office. I'm going to conform to it. And guess what? I still get to put one. So I get to be really fun of where does the one exclamation point go? So I'm still able to have that authentic communication and exclamation of joy or emphasis, but it's within the bounds of our professional standards.
So let's review, though. You've worked for me for 3 years, and you've
Mm-hmm.
moved from coordinator to manager to director to CMO in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you did that because you didn't make me nervous. You didn't make me nervous about your judgment, how I could trust you, the choices you would make. The stylistic, unwritten rules of work were things that you telegraphed to me, I've got this, right? Now, I know who your mentor was. Shout out to Lisa Bainbridge. And I know she did a lot of coaching because I asked her to, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of talent in you, and I said, let's coach Addy so that she can be in rooms full of CEOs and business owners, and I think she can do it, right? And you responded so beautifully to that coaching. But it's about telegraphing to people who need to trust you that you can be trusted. And it goes back to, of course, you can wear pajamas. You got agency to do whatever you want in your life as an adult. Are you willing to risk the consequences? So what we hear are these two narratives, right? We hear about how young people can't afford houses, because housing's too expensive, but also because they don't want leadership roles. And leadership roles are usually the things that come with higher price tags for compensation. So I think there's a disconnect between I want to work my work-life balance hours where I clock in and clock out and I don't take work home. I'm not annoyed with messages on the weekend, but I still want higher rates of pay. And I want to be able to buy my first house and educate my kids and retire and all this other stuff. So to a Gen Xer, we think, are you kidding? Because we were told you had to do all these horrible things to crawl on your hands and knees to gain credibility and trust. And only after you'd gone through a series of nonviolent hazing could you become senior enough to get compensated in a way where you could unlock all those other things in your life. So for me, I do care about how hard it is for young people out there. I think it's confusing, and I think the deck is stacked against them. I think there's a cohort of seniors who make decisions in our country who left this country worse off than they found it. And so there's no doubt that it's harder for young people, especially because that code of unwritten expectations wasn't explained to people like it was to you. What do you think are some of the key unwritten things that young people might want to think about? Because you don't want to hear it from me, but I want you to hear it from Addy.
Yeah, and I've experienced some of these pitfalls firsthand from both sides. And as I've started to be somebody who is a manager who has people reporting into me, I've had these moments where I've had to go, am I the man now? Because I kind of want to go, I don't care how hard it is. You got to get it done. That's your job. And I know
you're the man.
I am
They're
the man
working
now.
for the man.
The man. And, and as Taylor Swift knows, it's a good thing of how much further would we be if we were the man. And we are in that seat now where we are making those tough choices for our team and saying, I know it's going to be difficult, but we have to make this happen. And I've fallen into the pitfalls where I've been too accommodating of a manager, where I've said, tell me how hard it is. What can we do to make it easier? How are we able to smooth this out for you? And I do think it's important to have an open relationship where when something is really hard, that you can go to your manager and talk to them about it.
But if you're telling me all the time that it's hard, I'm tuning out on, it just feels like maybe this isn't the job for you because it's always hard, right?
Mm-hmm. That you want to leave the person that you're reporting to thinking that this employee of mine is trustworthy, that I don't have anxiety when I give them a task, that I know it's going to come back to me, that they are reliable in what they're delivering. And that trust means when somebody does come to me and says, hey, this is really hard and I don't know how to handle it, I know that it's
stop everything and
I
help
will
them
stop
with
everything
it. Yeah.
and help them because I know that I have this trust in them, that they are going to do the hard things and they're going to figure things out on their own. And when it does really hit that point where they need support, they're going to come and reach out for it. And that's really, really critical. And I had to stop accommodating members of my team because I am not one getting what I need out of them. Mm-hmm. And also I'm hindering their opportunity to grow. So they'll know that they'll come in and they'll ask me something. And sometimes I'll say, I'm not going to answer that for you. And they'll go, what? I go, but because you need to learn this, because I want you to have the struggle moment of figuring this out. Mm-hmm. So the next time that you engage with it, you already have the solution because you're the one who came up with it. So along the way, if you've got questions, come ask them. But I need you to be the one who takes the first step to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. And that muscle of anticipating, of problem solving, of getting there ahead of it, those are the muscles we need to manipulate the AI to do what we need it to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those muscles, which aren't task-based, they're not clock in, clock out kind of things. Those are, I own the enterprise of what I'm doing, and I am going to be thinking about it in a way that you're not thinking about it, so I can be indispensable to you. What do you think so when I think about the unwritten rules, I think that there are unwritten rules that are working against underserved populations as well. And I do think there are unwritten rules that are working against young people. I think there is sanctioned complaining that goes on about, these kids, they just don't get it. And I think that's rude. I think it's disrespectful. And if you're doing it and you're my age, stop, right? It's not a great place to build up a great culture.
And if you're not stopping to coach people, to share feedback with them and tell them how they can change to succeed, you're only contributing to the problem.
Correct. And it's again, I'm having a costume party, but I'm not telling you that it's costumes, right? And I think that the work world is so matrix, we don't even understand that that's what's out there happening, but it is, right? And so if you're young, I want you to stop and think about asking the kinds of questions that Addy asks. Who will be there? What should I wear? How should I communicate with this person, right? Think about these stylistic things that telegraph to someone over and over and over again, you can trust me, right? So when you think about a brand, it's about that thing that's been consistently related to you, that this is what you can expect from this brand. I can expect from Coca-Cola a refreshing, bubbly beverage that's served in a really great looking bottle, and it's nearly ubiquitously available at a price I can usually afford. And it doesn't matter what country I go to, it's going to taste the same, right? Or if I go to the Gap, I can get a white t-shirt and jeans there no matter what season it is. So when we're thinking about branding, which is what we have to do with our direct reports, we have to tell them how to think about us. And then we have to make sure that what we're telling them is consistently told over and over and over again. So if you're telling me in ways, I want you to take me seriously, I want to learn, I want to grow, and then you're still putting exclamation points in your emails, which are going to make my eyeballs roll back in my head, you've got an internal branding problem. Talk to me about what tips you might give people your age to avoid that kind of thing.
Well, I think about coaching that we give our interns whenever we do an orientation with them. And these are ones that you can use at any job level that you're entering. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're an intern. It doesn't matter if you're a coordinator, a manager, or director. The first thing you do when you show up is you should be listening and learning before you're speaking. So get the lay of the land.
But hang on, young people tell me all the time, hey, I want to be taken seriously. I want to be made to feel like I have a right to be in that room.
Yeah. And I think it's one of, you might have a right to be in the room, but you don't have a right to speak yet.
I love it.
That you have to listen and learn about the environment before you start inserting yourself, because you don't know what faux pas you're stepping into until you've assessed what the company culture is actually like.
How long would you give people as a guideline to do that?
So I would say your first 2 weeks in a role should really just be listening. And then it's not that you start giving diatribes every single meeting that you're in, but you start when your manager throws it to you in a staff meeting and says, hey, do you have anything to add to the report? If you do have something to add, that's when you would say it, is that you start finding those incremental ways to add in your value, your insights. As first, usually they'll be called upon. And then as you build a reputation that you are someone who's knowledgeable, who's resourceful on your team, you'll have more opportunities to chime in and start to just take your rightful seat at the table.
So it's really that stoop to conquer piece, right? So you're going to be quiet for 2 weeks so that you can be a director in 2 years and CMO in 3, right?
Yeah. And part of it too is looking at who in the organization should you actually be modeling yourself after. So this is one of the coaching tools that we use for our interns, is the intern should not be modeling how they dress, how they behave, how they interact in the office. how you and I interact in the office. Because we have a long-established history with those, our responsibilities are very different. They should be looking at the hierarchy in the organization of the next person up from them is a coordinator. That's probably the entry-level role. So they should be modeling themselves off of the coordinator role, who is probably in the office exactly when they're supposed to be there because they don't have other external meetings that they're taking at that time,
Right.
that they are always prepared of not only knowing what they need, but what their manager needs, that they are taking initiative around different projects as they're starting to gain some confidence and competency around them. But they should really be looking at what that next role is, if that's who they should model their behavior after, not the person who's at the top because they're not there yet, but you want to model it off of what your next natural step would be in an organization so that you're showing up the correct way.
So how did you get there? Because we've got people who we hear not in our office, but in the world of work that they want to be CEO after 6 months that are young people. Mm-hmm. How did you know that it wasn't appropriate for you to think you could be CEO after 6 months?
I think for me I wouldn't know how to do it. That would be so intimidating to be the CEO after 6 months, and also knowing how much responsibility truly sits on your shoulders. I barely know if I'd want to swallow that pill even today after 4 years into the role.
I've just made it look too glamorous.
Yes.
Okay.
So glamorous in that. But it is something that, what hubris to think that is where you should end up within 6 months of not knowing the lay of the land, not knowing the organizational history of, you haven't even seen a full year scope of work that you would know all of the touch points that you need to know to lead.
Okay, so that really touches on this, and I'm going to kind of say that you teed this up, not me. Mm-hmm. We're hearing that recent college graduates are too precious and that they're too entitled. And I think that you're talking about that. And I think part of that comes from the way they were parented, that child king phenomenon where you can be anything you want to be, honey, and here's your participant ribbon and all that. And I think I was guilty of being part of that parenting cohort. But I also think there's a sense of, again, Reese Witherspoon, what? Like it's hard? Like I've got a phone and I've got a computer and I've got ChatGPT. I could start a business, and we see people doing it all the time, right? So what we're missing in the like it's hard starting the business part is that lived experience of liability and risk that goes with public relations and how the company's being perceived optically out in the broader community. Or we just see a lot of stylistic things that haven't been covered off that lived experience and maturity confer on somebody. Going back to an earlier interview I had this year where I said to somebody, how do you make it work flexing across generations? And it's 2 generations he flexes across very ably, if not 3. And he said, I just stay open. And that seems really simple because what's the big deal with staying open? Many of us aren't, particularly in an increasingly more polarized and fragmented environment. We're not staying open to anybody else's point of view. But if you can stay open to what I can learn from someone who approaches the world through the lens of Gen Z, which is you're incredibly nimble with technology, and you're really great at filtering technology through the lens of what we need and what we don't. It's not all created equal. And I think that you're really good at understanding the limitations of technology. My generation has a kind of, and remember, this is an interesting point for young people to remember. We were born without phones, without the internet, and we had to learn it on the job in an instant, right? We actually had people come in and train us in our workplaces. Here's how you use PowerPoint. Here's how you use the internet. Things that you guys just picked up on the fly. We had corporate trainers come in and train us because we didn't even know what that was.
I legitimately was building PowerPoints in the 1st grade because they had a computer lab and they'd take us and they'd go play, have fun on the computer. So we would make PowerPoints about what our favorite pizza was. And now that was something I do in my job is make PowerPoints, but I have been training since the 1st grade.
And our PowerPoints we were building in my late 20s where the stakes were high. I mean, you were using that as a pitch deck live, having just been trained on how that tool worked. So it was that pivot point from never having it, learning it, and then ubiquitously having it. And I know in our last episode, you talked about how I don't know how to open a PDF, which I do. But there's sometimes I'm like, I can't make this thing work. Addy, just open it, right? And so, I mean, maybe more often than not. But I think some of that is I can do it. It's just I'm slower at it than you are. Can you just help us get through this clutter, right? And when you do learn it in first grade with the freedom to just play, then by the time you've gotten to age 28 and you're building pitch decks, you're like, here. So I think when we think about the takeaways for our listeners, we want to be thinking about building trust. We want to be thinking about telegraphing building trust so that you can move quickly through these roles. Because I think what I'm trying to say to the Gen Xers out there, stay open to somebody who's in their 20s being able to be your right-hand comms person for a community organization that sits in a lot of big profile community things where we have to respond to the media. We've got to run social media. We're bringing in, key nationally recognized authors, all this kind of stuff. I trust Addy to do that in a way that I only had someone who was a boomer doing that before. I moved from boomer to really you're millennial, but Gen Z adjacent, right? So boomer from Gen Z adjacent in that role. And I did it because you showed me that I could trust you to do that by using good judgment all the time. What are your hacks for building trust with your Gen X boss?
Well, part of this is also on the flip side of staying open, that I purposely spend a lot of time with people who are not a part of my generation, personally and professionally, and it adds so much richness and color to my life. But part of
hanging out with old people, like it's like Lloyd Dobler taking everybody to Cocoon at the nursing home.
Oh my gosh. But it is so much of that. I spent time of last week, I had drinks with someone in their 30s and in their 40s. And then I also had drinks with somebody who was in their 60s. And we were spending time just as peers talking, getting to know each other of what's going on in your world, what's exciting you, what's giving you concern. And we're building that rapport and we're staying open to learning and connecting with each other. And also when you have genuine connections, the age falls away and you forget, oh, wait, we're not the same age here. We are just people who are connecting and learning from each other. One of the ways, too, that I signaled to you that I had really good judgment is I knew when to ask for help. And I said, our organization's been around for 100 years. That's 100 years of history that I've been a part of for a very small fraction. And it comes up a lot in our organization, but I believe that it would in any other organization of something from 20 years ago can be impacting what's happening today.
Yep.
And I can go to someone and say, hey, I don't understand the context of what somebody just brought me. What's the history here? Lisa, who trained me, when I would get media requests, I would say, hey, what's our relationship with this reporter? Because I don't know what that is. This is a reporter who's been covering our organization for 10 years. When has it been positive? When has there been friction? What do they need to have a successful story about us? That going to those people with organizational knowledge is one of the reasons I was able to accelerate so quickly, is because I didn't expect myself to have it. I knew the right resources to go to learn it. And I was very open to learning from them. And I said, let's spend time together in the office, outside of the office, learning and engaging with each other.
So I love that because you maintained your authenticity throughout, but you got smart about locking down any of the open corners that you might have had to be responsible for in terms of risk. So kind of coming back around to where we started, show up authentically at work. Well, get older people to help you understand what an authentic version of that is going to be. Because it's very likely somebody your age has probably millennial or Gen X boss, right? So one of the things you did focus on in this is another hack, I think, which is managing up. If you're not familiar with managing up, it's about being intentionally partnered with your direct report so that you are being very intentional about anticipating what they need, understanding who their stakeholders are, understanding the pressures that they're under, and delivering so that you're adding value to those external forces that are working on that person. And if you're speaking different languages, tune yourself to the frequency of that direct report's language so they can hear you better. Focus on what they care about, right? I'm not a big, let's all go to a team happy hour person. I love data, right? So if you want to get my attention, give me a spreadsheet with a bunch of data on it, and I'm going to pay attention to that all day long. Now, we do a lot of team things together, but I'm just not a huge, warm, fuzzy, let's talk about rainbows and butterflies. I want to see data. So if you want to get my attention, you've figured out how to tune to that frequency. What tips do you have for people who are younger about how they might manage up?
Managing up is, the first one is observing. The first thing that you can do is really start watching who you're reporting into and picking up on what their habits are. I know that my team is managing up to me they know what time in the office I actually have downtime where they can come ask me questions. Because my schedule, as my responsibilities have grown, as I have more external meetings, I have more times where I'm not physically sitting in my office. And so they're able to look ahead and say, hey, she has an expectation that this document will be done by Friday, but I need her feedback on it by Wednesday to get there. When in her calendar on Wednesday will she be available to actually give me feedback? Because we need that moment to connect. And I'm going to set myself up for success by knowing her calendar so that I can slot in so that I deliver her expectations on Friday. And so one of the biggest ones is know your boss's calendar. See where they are.
Know your boss's calendar. All right. Do you want to give an unflattering time that you've had to manage up to me?
Let's see.
Unflattering for me, not you.
I will say when I'm working on scheduling things with you, I do know to use the Betsy buffer.
What is that?
And so this is one of...
Do you guys call it that?
Only I do. In my head, I go Betsy buffer.
Oh, I know what that is. I always run 5 minutes behind. Always.
So I always make sure that somebody once came into my office and they said, hey, are we meeting with Betsy right now? And I said, no, we'll meet when she gets here. And they went, oh, and I said, here's the thing. I am always ready for the start of our meeting because you have an extremely packed calendar. And when you're running 5 minutes late, it's not because you don't care about my time. It's not because...
It's because I'm trying to squeeze one more thing in for the organization. Yeah.
And so I always know that means if you're not here yet, it's because you're spending your time doing something equally, if not more valuable. And so that's not something I ever take offense from.
Thank you for not taking it that way.
But in that of knowing... okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm ready. This is me managing up to you. If I'm ready whenever you walk in so that I don't derail your day. And in that though, but also too, is usually when I'm scheduling my next meeting, I'll give myself hey, I'm in with Betsy. I'm going to not schedule my next meeting for 30 minutes after because we might stay longer because
we need to keep me around
because we might talk about something more. And so that's me managing my schedule, managing your schedule, and managing my team's schedule because they know, she's going to add that buffer in. So whenever it's time for us to start, she's ready for that. So that's part of it is knowing your calendar is one of the biggest secret weapons that I have is so I got access to your calendar very early on into my time because we were scheduling weekly video shoots. So I needed to know when you had things going on so that I could fit in video shoots with you. And that's something I strategically used and still strategically use today. And I had an offsite with my team where it came to light. They said, we don't know where you are half the time. And I went, me. Oh. They didn't know where I was half the time. And I went, that's right. You don't. And so I gave them access to my calendar so that they would know I'm at a city meeting for 2 hours on Tuesday mornings. So they're not going to see me. So they're able to adjust their schedule so that everything works together. So that's one of know your boss's calendar. And you might not have full access to the calendar, but you're able to see what those patterns are, adjust to them, and make sure that you're always ready.
I love it. Okay, so we could talk about this forever and ever, and we're going to. We're going to keep making this more a part of our series. So we would love it if you would write in your questions to us in the comment section or hit us up on social and let us know what you're struggling with as you're navigating across intergenerational lines. We've got the resident Gen Z / millennial and the resident Gen X here to kind of pick that apart and help people get equipped to move across these lines. I love working with Addison, as you can probably see, and I love the way she inspires me to stay open, to think differently, to use technology differently, and to just help me supersize what I'm able to do at work and squeeze one more thing in. Sorry, I'm running 5 minutes late. But I hope that our collaboration is inspiring to you and will help give you tools moving forward. We really do want to hear from you what you're struggling with, or maybe a win that you've had that we can share with our listeners. Today, we focus on so many cool things. Yes, be authentic, but make sure that you've read the room. Make sure you've checked in with your boss. Make sure you're managing up, and stay open so that you can stay curious and you can learn more about what's expected of you in those unwritten rules of work. Addy, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me again, Betsy.
All right, we'll see you next time on the Be Student Podcast.